Hey, it's Grady at Twin Creek Audio, back in the studio today. This video is by viewer request. Today I'm going to mix the instrumental version of the song The Tallest Sky. This is the YouTube version of the song, not the one from my Subliminal Moonshine album, but the one that I recorded and mixed in a video last spring. I will put a link to that video at the end of this video if you'd like to see the recording and creation of this song that I did here in the studio. This song was tracked completely with the Soundtrack's Topaz using the Topaz preamps. Even the bass DI was a Hosa DI connected to the mic input on the Soundtrack's Topaz. However, today I'm going to mix this instrumental version of the song through the Soundcraft Sapphyre. I'm going to use a couple of pieces of outboard gear, mainly compressors, so let me show you what I'm using and then let's mix this song. Here on the Sapphire's Patchbay, I have the inserts for channels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, all connected to outboard compressors. Channel 1, which is the kick drum, is connected to the LA-10, the Urei LA-10. The snare drum, channel 2 up there, is connected to the Symetrix 501 compressor. Then I have the overhead and the tom mic. Since this was a Glenn John style setup, I have those connected to the LA Audio 4x4 here on the Patchbay. And then on the bass guitar, I'm going to use a new toy, something that I just got from my good friend Travis Atkinson at Strangebird Recording. Let me show you that in just a second. While I'm on the subject of the Patchbay, as a side note, not everything on here is labeled correctly yet. Some things are, but I changed the configuration of the outboard gear a lot. I'm always adding new things and sometimes selling things in order to fund the purchase of new things. So not everything is labeled. I'm working on getting that labeled, and so in future videos it may be a little bit easier to see what's connected. But that's kind of why I go over these in detail. So here's the new guy. This is a Symetrix CL-100 compressor limiter. This I'm using on bass guitar in this mix. This is going to be a very simple mix. I'm only using 7 channels on the console. When this was originally recorded, I only had an 8-track setup for that video with the Motu 828. So it was only 8 tracks total. And now without the vocal track for the instrumental version, we've got 7 channels, and that's it. Simplicity is good sometimes, so let's see what we can do with this mix. See, I told you it's a simple mix. We have 7 channels with 7 tracks. We have kick, snare, and then we've got the mic that's over the snare drum and the mic that's aimed across the floor tom. This was a Glenn John style mic setup. Make sure you check out the original video where I tracked this song, and again, I'll put a link to that at the end of this video so you can see how this was actually done. So we've got 4 drum tracks, mono bass guitar track, mono acoustic guitar, and mono electric guitar. And again, all of this stuff, how this was all recorded, is all in that previous video that I'll put the link to at the end of this one. I've got some EQ going on up here. I'm boosting some low mids on the kick drum and also some high mids, but not as high as I normally do. I'm going for more of the punch frequency and not so much of the clicky attack this time. So it's a lower frequency. Normally I would boost around 3K, and this is a little bit lower than that. I just did that by ear though, just boosted that and listened to it until it sounded round with enough punch and definition to the kick, but not that clicky attack. On the snare drum, I'm boosting a little bit with the 12K shelf on the snare drum. On the 2 mics over the snare and by the tom, I'm pulling out some high mids. That's around 800 hertz. And then I'm pulling out some low mids too. And I have compressors on all these drum tracks here. I have the this is the Urei LA-10, excuse me, on the kick drum. Symetrix 501 here on the snare drum, and the LA Audio 4x4 is here on these 2 channels, the one that's over the snare and across the floor tom. On bass guitar, I actually have the new guy, the Symetrix CL-100 compressor on the bass, and I'm boosting a little bit with the 80 hertz low shelf. That's it. On the acoustic guitar, I'm boosting a little bit of high mids and removing a little bit of 80. I also have the high pass filter engaged on the acoustic and the electric guitar track. Let's go ahead and hear what this mix sounds like now. I like that pretty well. There's still some funkiness in the cymbals for some reason, so let me see if I can find out what's happening there. I'm going to solo up the overhead and that floor tom mic and listen to those by themselves. Somewhere around 800, 600, between 600 and 800, we've got that funky kind of cymbal sound. So I really was already right on the frequencies. I just pulled a little bit more of that out with the Sapphyre EQ, which is an asymmetric EQ. So the cut frequencies are narrower than the boost frequencies, and I believe it gets narrower the more that you cut. So it's a little bit of a balancing act, but that design does work really well. And I think we've got a better sound on the cymbals now. Let's check it out in the full mix. So that's a good lesson and something that I've observed many times. When I solo those two drum tracks, that cymbal harshness and weirdness, that funky kind of sound, it's there, it's more obvious, but when I put the full mix together, it doesn't bother me anymore. So the tweaks I've made on the EQ seem to have done the trick in the full mix, although when I bring those two tracks up and solo them, it still bugs me a little bit, but we're going to go with that for this mix here because I think that sounded pretty good. I'm going to move on to the bass guitar and give that a listen now. The bass already sounds pretty good. Let's take the compression off of the bass. We're just going to bypass it with the button up here on the Sapphyre and listen to the bass again without the CL-100 on the bass. So the bass is sounding pretty good. It's a nice round sound. It's got enough attack to drive the rhythm of the song, but it's not overly aggressive, because obviously we don't want that on an acoustic song that's fairly soft like this. We want it to be a nice round sound, but we want to keep that rhythm in there too. So that's working out pretty well. There is no EQ on the bass guitar. Actually, there's a little bit of 80 hertz boost right here on the bass. That's it. That's all I've got, that and the CL-100 compressor. Let's move on to the acoustic guitar. It's a mono acoustic track. I do have that EQ'd a little bit. I'm pulling out a little bit of 80. I do have the high pass filter on the acoustic track, and then I'm boosting a little bit of high mids to get the sparkle out of, really it's mid-range, not so much sparkle. I'm not boosting any of the shelf or anything on this. Pulling out a little bit of 80 and boosting some high mids to get the acoustic guitar. So let's hear the acoustic now. See, the acoustic guitar sounds pretty good. I did take the EQ out for a second. I actually pulled out the little bit of 80 hertz that I had that actually cutting a little bit of 80, and I put that back to 0, so we're not really EQing anything there. And then I cut down the high mid boost by just a little bit. I cut that in half. I realized I don't need quite as many high mids in that acoustic to make it sound good. So we're going to see how that fits in the entire mix now. I feel like the acoustic needs some compression, so I'm going to patch in the RNC, the really nice compressor on this acoustic track. So to accomplish what I wanted to with the acoustic, I had to move my RNC back into the rack. I moved this and the DBX 163X the other day when I mounted the Symetrix CL-100 here. So I've put the RNC back over here and plugged it back into the tie lines on the Patchbay so that I can use it on the acoustic guitar on this song. Let's hear the acoustic guitar by itself with the RNC compressor on it. The effect of the RNC on that acoustic guitar is very subtle, but it works really well. It fattens it up just a little bit. It makes it sound a little bit more cohesive, and it makes the high end a little less fatiguing. So I'm going to leave that RNC on the acoustic guitar track. Now we're going to move on to the electric guitar, which was a Telecaster copy. And again, that's in the original video where I tracked this song. So this is the electric guitar track. There's not anything on this. I don't have any EQ or compression on this electric guitar, so let's hear what that sounds like. The electric guitar sounds really good. It's not really going all over the place level-wise, so I don't really think I want to add any compression to that. If I do, then it might make it sit too far back in the mix, and it may not punch through the mix very well. And that's also during the lead guitar part, I'll just push that fader up a little bit, do some manual old school mixing for that. Other than that, I think we've got this ready to print the final mix. This mix has no reverb on it at all, other than whatever kind of room sound we got out of the 4 drum mics. As you can see, the Rev 500 there in the rack isn't even turned on. Here is the other outboard gear that I used in this mix today. The Urei LA-10 on the kick drum, the Symetrix 501 on the snare drum, and yes, these are the exact settings from the mix that I did today. Then the 2 overhead mic and tom mic pair are going through this LA Audio 4x4 compressor with those settings, and of course, like I talked about at the beginning of the video, the Symetrix CL-100 on the bass guitar. Here are the settings that I used on the acoustic guitar on the RNC. It is in super nice mode, and as you can see, that's threshold, from left to right, threshold, ratio, attack, release, and then the output gain. And I'm using a little bit of a faster release because it's kind of a bouncy acoustic guitar track, and I like a fast release on acoustic anyway. So I'll kind of start out with a fast release, and then I'll fine tune the attack to get the sound that I want. But I like a fast release because it gives a little more bounce to the acoustic guitar, and in super nice mode, you're not going to hear it, and you're not going to destroy the sound of the guitar. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's instrumental mix of The Tallest Sky. I wanted to say thank you to the viewer who requested that I mix an instrumental version of this song. Hopefully whoever he decides to sing this song to will appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you for watching this video and for subscribing to the Twin Creek Audio YouTube channel. Make sure to check out the links in the video description for ways that you can help support this channel, as well as liking this video, subscribing to the Twin Creek Audio YouTube channel if you have not done so already. Again, hope that you all have an excellent day, night, evening, weekend, weekday, hour, minute, second, nanosecond, whatever it is you're having. Have a good one, and thanks so much for watching.